A man sprints across an empty field, and for a split second it looks like speed might save him. Then the low sky closes in, because in Ukraine a small FPV drone can turn one step into a final mistake. This story is about that new kind of power, where a buzzing motor can replace a warning shot and force decisions faster than any radio call. Frontline footage shows Russian soldiers trying every human reflex at once, because some run, some freeze, some fire wild bursts, and some even try to strike the drone itself. Most of the time, it does not matter, since the drone is already lined up before the shooter can steady a sight. The real shock is not the blast, but the message, because once a position is spotted, it can be tracked, fixed in place, and hit again while people scatter. Near the Pokrovsk sector, this pressure is starting to shape how men move, how vehicles risk the roads, and how morale holds under constant threat. Subscribe to Military Force, because the next minutes break down how this low sky is rewriting modern combat in real time. Once the first drone appears, the next question is simple. What can a soldier do when there is no time left to react? FPV pressure matters because it turns basic human reflexes into losing options once the drone has already committed to the strike. In the footage, Russian soldiers react in several instinctive ways when a Ukrainian FPV closes in, because some sprint across open ground, some drop flat and hope the drone loses them, some fire bursts upward, and some try to swat or kick the device at the last second. Those choices look different on screen, yet they share the same problem, since the gap between detection and impact is often too short for aim, cover, or coordination. A person can run fast, but a small drone can adjust faster, and that is why speed alone becomes a trap instead of a solution. A person can lie still, but a drone does not need to be fooled by silence if it already has a visual line and a stable approach. A person can shoot back, but short bursts under stress often miss, and even a hit may not stop the mission if the warhead is already close enough to do its job. This is why the different reactions still end in the same result in many clips, because the drone is not acting like a random threat, but like a guided strike that only needs one clean moment. The tactical lesson is sharper than the shock value, since FPV attacks force a brutal choice between moving and staying still, and both options carry a high cost once the drone is inside the final seconds. Movement can expose a clear silhouette against a field or a road, and it can also signal direction to the pilot, which helps the drone keep lead and close the last meters. Stillness can reduce noise, yet it also removes the chance to reach hard cover, so the body becomes the only target zone left for the drone to solve. That is why modern battlefield survival is starting to look less like bravery and more like timing, spacing, and control of exposure, even at the level of a single soldier. At the same time, it is important to treat this as a montage, because compilation footage can mix different days, places, and units, and the viewer does not always get independent location checks in the clip itself. Still, even without full geolocation, the repeated pattern is hard to dismiss, since the same sequence keeps appearing. The drone is spotted late, the reaction is instant, and the outcome is decided in a few seconds. In political terms, that pattern matters because it feeds morale on one side and fear on the other, and it can shape how commanders justify tactics, losses, and requests for more drones and more counter-drone tools. It also shifts the way the public understands the war, since a single short clip can suggest control, precision, and dominance, even when the wider frontline picture is more complex. When those factors combine, the most vulnerable person is not the one in a strong position, but the one who is separated from support and forced to face the low sky alone. When a soldier is alone, there is no cover plan, no buddy team, and no second chance. FPV drones are most lethal when a soldier is left alone in open ground with no team support and no hard cover. Many clips show single Russian troops separated from their group because they appear behind the line, near a tree line, or stranded in a wide field close to the fighting. In that setting, the drone does not need a complicated plan, since the target has only a few basic choices and each one exposes something. Open areas are dangerous for a simple reason, because there are fewer objects that can break line of sight and fewer places that can absorb blast or fragments. A running path is easy to read from above, and the pilot can lead the target like a moving dot on a flat map. Even small motions can give away position, since a head lift, a sudden turn, or a sprint to the nearest bush creates a clear pattern the drone can follow. This is why the field problem is not just fear, but geometry, because the drone only needs a clear lane for a few seconds to close distance and strike. The key weakness is not only exposure, but isolation, because a lone soldier has no partner to suppress the drone's approach and no one to force the pilot to jink away. There is also no one to pull a wounded man into cover, so a hit becomes a final event instead of a recoverable one. When a group is present, someone can watch the sky while others move, but when one person is stranded, every task competes for the same hands and the same seconds. That is why the drone wins the timing battle, since the target must look up, decide, move, and shoot, all while the drone keeps closing. This pattern often shows up in moments of disruption, because withdrawals, broken routes, and vehicle losses can leave men scattered across open spaces. A unit that is pulling back under pressure can lose spacing, and one wrong turn can push a soldier into a field where there is no trench line and no planned fallback point. A vehicle hit can also create stragglers, because some people dismount too early, some get separated by smoke, and some simply cannot find the rest of their element. Even without full context for each clip, the repeated theme is consistent, because the targets are not in strong positions and they are not moving as a coordinated squad. From a policy angle, this matters because it changes how both sides talk about control, since a few seconds of video can suggest dominance over an area, even if the map line barely moves. It also pressures commanders to adapt, because the cost of leaving people behind grows when drones can patrol the gaps and punish any delay. The result is a battlefield that demands tighter control of movement, better spacing, and faster casualty evacuation, since the open ground between positions becomes a hunting zone. When the fight reaches that point, the drone's job stops being only about hitting a man, and it starts being about breaking the rhythm of how forces move. The next step is even harsher. Hit the vehicle, force a scramble, then hunt the exit. The MTLB strike highlights how FPV drones can convert a moving vehicle into an abrupt choke point, and then exploit that forced congestion to deliver a rapid sequence of follow-on hits. In the footage, a Ukrainian FPV hits a Russian MTLB carrying troops, and the first impact does not just damage metal, because it slows the vehicle and forces an unplanned stop under pressure. That slowdown is the key moment, since a moving target gives the crew choices, but a stuck target gives the drone team control over timing. Once the MTLB loses pace, the inside of the vehicle becomes a trap, because staying mounted risks a second hit while dismounting exposes people in the open. The clip suggests the soldiers exit in confusion, and that detail matters, because a rushed dismount breaks spacing and makes people cluster near the same side of the hull. For an FPV pilot, that cluster is an invitation, since the drone does not need to search across a wide area and can commit to the easiest figure to track. This is a clean example of a simple chain. Strike the moving point first, create a choke point, then punish the human scramble that follows. It is also a reminder that an armored vehicle is not a single object, because it carries a rhythm for the whole group around it, including who follows, who covers, and who uses it as a reference line. When that rhythm collapses, the problem spreads outward. Since trailing troops hesitate, nearby teams turn to watch the hit, and any planned route can stall at the same spot. A stalled vehicle can also mark the area for indirect fire, but even without artillery, it becomes a visual beacon that keeps attention locked on one piece of ground. That is why the MTLB hit is more than a tactical win, because it creates a moment where the defenders can keep striking without chasing, and the attackers must react without a clear plan. There is also a psychological layer, since the sound and sight of a drone circling above a disabled vehicle can push people into rushed moves, and rushed moves produce patterns that pilots can read. The footage does not show every detail, so it is fair to say the exact sequence and damage level are hard to confirm from a short clip, yet the logic fits what FPV teams train to do. A warhead that disables a track, damages the engine, or shocks the driver into stopping can be enough, because the mission is not always to destroy the hull, but to force the dismount. Once troops are outside, they lose the partial protection the armor gave them, and they also lose the ability to move as one unit, because each person now chooses a different piece of cover. That moment is where FPV becomes a control weapon, since it shapes where people run, when they pause, and how long they stay exposed before they reach a ditch or a tree line. For viewers watching from far away, it can look like a small clip, but in operational terms it points to a wider pressure on mechanized movement, because one well-timed hit can slow an entire push. When vehicles start to fear the open routes, resupply gets slower, evacuations get riskier, and commanders are forced to use longer paths that cost time and fuel. That is why a single MTLB strike connects to a bigger story, because once mobility is broken, the battlefield shifts toward targeting the systems that guide and protect movement in the first place. After the vehicle is stopped, the next target is the network that tells units where danger is coming from. These strikes go beyond isolated fighters and begin targeting the systems that keep an army operational, so the battle shifts towards surveillance, communications, and precision-directed fire, rather than sheer manpower. One clip shows a rocket launcher described as a Type 63 being found and hit. And that detail is important because a launcher is not only steel on wheels, but a way to flood an area with rockets on short notice. When a system like that is removed, the effect reaches farther than the crater, since it can reduce sudden saturation fire that pins infantry and forces vehicles to halt. It also tells a story about priorities, because the drone team is choosing targets that can shape the whole local battle rhythm instead of only chasing whoever is nearest. That logic points toward a battlefield where command value matters as much as raw numbers, which is where this sequence starts to widen in meaning. The same pattern appears when the footage shows an antenna used for UAV communications being destroyed, since that is a direct attack on the link that connects observers to shooters. If an antenna or relay is lost, coordinates can arrive late, and late information is often the difference between a clean strike and a missed chance. Coordination between drones, artillery, and small units depends on fast sharing, so a broken connection can slow corrections, reduce accuracy, and leave teams working blind for longer. Even if a unit still has drones in the air, the network that guides them can be weaker, and that weakness can force pilots to fly closer and take more risk to keep control. So this is not just damage to hardware, it is pressure on the decision cycle that lets one side act first, and that sets up why mobility targets appear right after. Some scenes then shift the danger zone to places that used to feel safer, including a Russian military boat moving mid-river and small groups riding motorcycles along exposed routes. A boat on open water has limited cover and limited turning room, and once a drone sees it, the escape path is narrow and easy to predict. Motorcycle movement carries the same problem on land, because speed helps only if there is concealment ahead, yet many routes cut across fields, berms, and straight tracks that are visible from above. These clips suggest that even small logistics runs and quick relocations can be punished, which means the threat is no longer tied to one trench line but follows the arteries behind it. That widening of risk changes how resupply, evacuation, and small raids are planned, and it pushes both sides to spend more effort on low-altitude defense. Geography makes this worse, because riverside banks and open approaches often have few hard objects that can block sight, so a person or vehicle becomes a clear shape against a plain background. Once detected, the options are limited, since turning around can expose the same route again, while pressing forward can lead into an even more open stretch. A river also acts like a corridor, and corridors are predictable, which helps the pilot set an intercept line and close distance without guessing. That is why these targets matter politically as well, because footage of strikes on boats, rockets, and comms signals a message of control over space, even when the wider front may still be contested. The exact locations are not confirmed in the montage, yet the target selection matches a clear tactical theme that is spreading across sectors. When the road becomes a trap, survival means abandoning speed and chasing cover. The footage underscores a battle space where even light, rapid mobility can collapse under FPV pressure, forcing soldiers to abandon vehicles and rely on concealment and terrain for survival, while commanders rethink routes, timing, dispersion, and the cost of every exposed movement under constant observation. In footage, Russian troops ride motorcycles and then leave them behind in clusters, because a bike that feels like escaping becomes a moving marker from above. Once an FPV pilot commits to the chase, the rider is trapped between two bad choices, since staying mounted keeps the target visible while jumping off loses speed, but may offer a tree line, a ditch, or a low fold in the land. The abandoned bikes are not just clutter, because they mark the moment speed stops being the advantage and starts being the signature. When riders jump off, they are trading a big, fast target for a smaller profile, and that is a survival move even when the odds stay bad. The gamble is harsh, but it is often the only gamble left. Open areas make that choice worse, because there are few hard objects and the drone can correct quickly, yet dismounting can still be the only move that breaks an intercept line. The motorcycle throws dust, noise, and direction into one readable track, so it can guide the pilot even after the rider slips toward brush. When many bikes are abandoned, the loss is not only the machine, since the unit also loses time, spacing, and the ability to regroup under fire. That matters to operations because motorcycles are used for short shifts between positions, quick deliveries, and fast scouting moves that keep a line stable. If that tool becomes unreliable, movement slows, timing slips, and small gaps become harder to close. That slower rhythm can decide who holds the next line. The montage also shows a duel between fiber optic FPV drones on both sides, which points to electronic warfare shaping choices at the lowest level. In simple terms, a fiber optic drone carries a cable spool that keeps a direct control link, so the pilot is less dependent on radio signals that can be jammed, spoofed, or drowned by noise. That can make the video feed steadier under interference, and it can protect the final seconds of guidance where many attacks either hit or fail. It also changes the risk math, because a stable link can turn a difficult approach into a confident strike. That stability becomes a weapon when both sides try to blind each other. But the cable also brings limits, because it can snag on trees, poles, or rubble, and it can restrict hard turns if the line starts to bind. It ties the launch point to the flight path, since the operator must think about where the cable can run, how far the drone can go, and how to avoid sharp angles that could break the line. So this duel is not just a clip. It is evidence that both sides are adapting to keep control when jamming rises and counter-drone pressure grows. That shift signals a wider race to keep control when the air is crowded. FPV drones are central to modern combat because they do more than destroy targets, and they also shape behavior, timing, and morale. A soldier who hears a drone may sprint too early, freeze in the wrong spot, or cluster near the same cover, and those reactions can break cohesion before any blast. A supply driver who expects FPV patrols may delay a run, choose longer roads, travel in smaller packets, or avoid daylight, and each choice slows the flow of ammo, fuel, and medical evacuation. Even when the front line barely moves, this pressure still drains endurance because rotation becomes harder and confidence drops. And this is why the low sky is no longer background noise. It is the main weapon that shapes every move. This footage points to one hard rule in modern war, which is that safe movement disappears when the low sky is filled with FPV drones. When basic reflexes fail, the separated soldier becomes the easiest target, and when a vehicle is slowed or stopped, the whole group can lose control in seconds. The target list also matters because strikes on rocket launchers and UAV communication antennas show a clear priority on disabling command and reconnaissance, not just cutting manpower. That shift decides who sees first and who acts first, which is often more important than who fires the most rounds. If fiber optic FPVs spread wider, the advantage may go to the side that can run stable drone networks under electronic warfare, not only the side with the biggest stockpile. But if short-range defense and jamming improve fast, the fight may turn into a dense drone versus drone filter, where every minute is a test of adaptation. This is also why politics cannot look away, because drone supply, training pipelines, and export controls now shape frontline outcomes as much as tactics. So the open question is simple. Who breaks the detect-to-strike chain first, and can small movement routes survive at all? Share your take in the comments, and subscribe to Military Force for clear reporting on modern weapons and real battlefield tactics.